So, Columbia University announced that they're having multiple different graduation ceremonies divided up by race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. Imagine being so woke that you become a segregationist. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ruthless.
Democrats are set to take control of the U.S. Senate, House, and the White House.
This will go down as one of the most progressive administrations in American history.
God willing, everything is on the table.
You now can pass things without a filibuster threat.
That's right.
Oh, you'll regret this, and you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
Well, welcome to the variety program. We have a very big one today.
Yeah. What's amazing is, all the things we got on the various burners going on. So everyone already knows Hack Madness is underway. Hopefully everyone listening to this has already filled out their liberal hack bracket sheets, submitted them. The play-in games are going on as we speak.
SV and Singer have got a tight one going. I can see that happening right now in the Way Too Online bracket. We also have Jessica Taylor and Greg Bluestein squaring off in the fake news bracket. Folks, it's time to get involved. We're underway.
Yeah. And we've submitted our own brackets in our internal Ruthless Slack. We didn't want to post them publicly. We don't want to, put a thumb on the scale here for our listeners. But one thing I did want to comment on when Smug posted his filled out bracket to the Slack, he actually signed it. So Smug is very pro signature verification on his mail-in ballot.
Yeah, I believe in strong election security. The signature should match up.
That's great.
The man practices what he preaches, which is what you get here on the variety program. We get authenticity through and through.
That's right. No HR1 garbage on these bracket sheets for me.
So before we get into the meat of the program, this is a rare 2-interview program.
Doubleheader.
Where we have Congresswoman Miller Meeks, who listened to the program on Tuesday, where we were trying to highlight what's happening. And so she's got an interview that Duncan, I'll let you preview. But then we also have Katie Pavlich, Fox News, our own star, Katie Pavlich, coming on to talk about a variety of things. So it's gonna be terrific.
Yeah, I know I mentioned it, but can we talk about the power of Ruthless? Like we had said, no one is talking about the situation with Rep. Miller Meeks of how Nancy Pelosi is essentially trying to steal that election. Like Miller Meeks won the election. She won the recount. The election was certified. Now Nancy Pelosi is still trying to steal that seat from her. The people listened, word got out. Now you hear people talking about it. And we got Rep. Miller Meeks on the show today. That's the power of Ruthless, folks.
And the Congresswoman is extremely grateful for that. She's on the program today. And walks us through, from election night when she won in Iowa's 2nd congressional district, the process that unfolded afterwards, the recanvass, the recount, the certification, and now the craziness and hypocrisy that we're seeing from Nancy Pelosi as they essentially try to steal her election from her. So I think we should just get right into the interview.
Let's do it.
Congresswoman, welcome to Ruthless.
Well, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on.
We'll get right to it because what's happening right now is just so wild. And I'm hoping you can give our listeners a little bit of insight. Back in November, you won a close election in Iowa's 2nd congressional district. A little bit of a roller coaster ride since election night.
Do you mean the never-ending campaign?
Yes.
It feels like the never-ending campaign. So we were ahead several hundred votes on election night. We knew with that close of a margin that as the absentee ballots came in and provisional ballots were cured, that number would either grow or diminish. And so we were kind of prepared for this from election night on. I think we celebrated for about 1 hour and then knew that we had to get to work. So our celebratory time was very brief because we were preparing for the next steps. So in Iowa, if ballots are mailed, they have to be postmarked or barcoded by the day before the election. And they have up until a week, the following Monday, for those ballots to come in. So, and then all the counties do their official county canvass. So that happens the week after the election. So on election night, I was ahead. When the counties did their official county canvass, I was ahead. There were several counties that had to recount ballots. And so those were done and I was still ahead. And as we expected, our opponent requested a recount, which you can do under Iowa law, and you have a certain time frame that you have to do that. Recounts are made of a recount board. Each county has their own recount board. There is a member chosen by each candidate. So there was one Democrat member, one Republican member, and then there's a third member who is supposed to be agreed upon by the two candidates. And if they don't agree upon them, they're appointed by the district judge. And the district judge in the most populous parts of our district are not necessarily conservative judges. So throughout this recount process, there's looking at the ballots in accordance with Iowa law. So that whittled down our margin of victory to 6 votes. So we're now ahead 6 votes. I get certified by the Secretary of State and a bipartisan executive council. So 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats, one of whom is the state auditor. The other is the treasurer, signed off and certified that I had won the election. And that went forward. And then I was sworn in on January 3rd. And I think an important thing about January 3rd is that there was a motion brought up by Representative Chip Roy out of Texas, looking at the states that were being contested, that if those states' elections had irregularities, no representative from that state should be seated. And every Democrat voted that every election was perfect, efficient, valid, and every representative should be seated. They all voted. No one contested my race in Iowa 2. And so on January 3rd, I was sworn in and I'm a full functioning congressperson. I know at the time when Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked, she said, well, we'll provisionally seat her. There is no provisionally seating. I'm a congresswoman. I'm functioning to serve the people of the 2nd district. I vote. I ask questions. I participate in committee hearings. I ask questions at those hearings and briefings. And as you know, recently toured the border with Leader McCarthy and other members of Homeland Security.
So you win the election, you go through the canvass, the recanvass, you win the recount, your race is certified, and your opponent, Rita Hart, has the option to contest this in court. But instead of doing that, she appeals to Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. She could go through the courts. The courts would have looked at any ballots of which she had any concern that had been rejected as invalid ballots, but she decides to skip that. Now, why would you skip going through a court for 22 ballots? And she said, well, there were too many ballots, and there was not enough time for the court to do that. But I would think neutral and impartial judges that make it all the way to the Supreme Court of a state would have the wherewithal to determine if they needed more time. And so she skips over Iowa courts because she knows she's going to lose in Iowa courts, and then she would take losing in the courts to Congress. So now she wants Congress to decide who gets to serve in the 2nd district and who gets to be their representative. So it's gone from an election process to a partisan political process. And she even said she was interviewed for a TV interview from one of our stations, and said, well, we had to go this route. We had to skip over the courts. We had to take it to Congress to get the results we need, not the results of the Iowa voters, not the results of Iowa law. And let me also add, because I know I can see your mind thinking of this, she was a state senator for 6 years. So if she thought the rules were not appropriate or were invalid at any point in time during those 6 years, she could have introduced election law changes. You can't just change the rules because you don't get the result you need. If for 3 times you don't have the result you need, then you refuse to go to the courts because you're not going to get the result you need, and then you have to take it to Congress. I think that explains everything. All the legal ballots were counted. At every juncture, I was ahead. They want to take this to a partisan political process because might makes right.
And it's, I really worry that this situation right now with your race is a precursor of what we'll see if the Democrats get their way in trying to federalize all elections and undo the will of state voters by passing H.R. 1. Can you speak a little bit to that legislation?
Well, I think you're exactly right. And I try to take this out of the personal context. People should be outraged at what's happening, not because of me personally, but because of the precedent it sets and because it underscores what they're trying to do with HR 1. So all of those states that work very hard to get voter ID laws. And in Iowa, our Supreme Court upheld our voter ID law as being valid and being constitutional. They also upheld the changes we made in order to have absentee ballots have a driver's license number or a voter identification number. So you have some voter ID on the absentee ballot or mail-in ballots. And so, but HR 1 totally does away with that. It federalizes elections. By the Constitution, elections are the province of the states. It was one of the reasons why we had to look carefully at what we did in certifying electors and the Electoral College. Constitutionally, that is the job of the states to do. And what they're trying to do is to nullify voter ID laws, expand mail-in ballot voting, reduce signature verification. I mean, it's really amazing the breadth of what they're doing in HR 1. And I can only hope that it will not pass in the Senate. And if it does pass in the Senate, I can only hope that it would be struck down by the Supreme Court.
Down to brass tacks here. Now the House Administration Committee, being led by the Democrats, is basically trying to overturn the will of Iowa's voters. Can you walk us through briefly the timeline of how this will transpire and what your recourse is if they do try to overturn the election? Is it a federal lawsuit? What is your recourse?
So the House Committee on Administration, we've been asking for a timeline because of the way things are functioning in Congress right now. The committees were not set up until February. So the House Committee on Administration only recently met, established their rules, and then brought up our opponent's petition. And we asked them to dismiss the petition because there has never been a time where a state certified representative has been unseated or has had their election overturned. And they felt that there were enough concerns that no one could know who won the election in Iowa 2. Well, I'll tell you who knows who won the election in Iowa 2. The voters in Iowa, which they're trying now to disenfranchise 400,000 voters. The Secretary of State in Iowa knows who won. And a bipartisan executive council in Iowa knows who won this election, and I was sworn in. But they're trying to use this political process because constitutionally, Article 1, Section 5, Congress shall seat its members, has the authority to seat its members. So using that provision, it has not been, a representative has not been overturned, or an election has not been overturned since 1984. That's the Bloody Eight in Indiana. And, the recourse, could you try to proceed and do a lawsuit? I don't know that that's really a valid tact for us to take. As I see it, if they decide to overturn the election, I have no recourse except to run again in 2022.
And the hypocrisy here, of course, with everything that's transpired over the last few months, is just stunning. I hope it doesn't come to that, obviously. Now, we always ask our guests on Ruthless here 3 questions at the end. And I feel like it gives a good insight, the lighter side of the people who come on the program. First question is, what would be your last meal on earth?
Well, the problem is I don't know if it's my last meal when I have my last meal. So I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage here, but I hope it's something really good like, Jack in the Box tacos or chocolate ice cream from Graham's.
Yeah.
Or
Tacos has been a popular last meal. A few people have come on and given that. And hey, I love a good taco. Question 2, if you weren't in politics, what would you be doing?
I probably would be doing medicine. So I resigned from my practice last January, but I'm hoping that while in Congress, if I stay here, and we're hoping I stay here, that I'll be able to do missionary work as well. But I would be practicing medicine. It's going to sound terrible, but I'd be sticking needles in people's eyes, which sounds terrible, but it helps save vision. So I would be doing cataract surgery, treating macular degeneration, improving people's vision with glasses, which is very rewarding. All of my patients liked me regardless of what their political persuasion was. And most importantly, it was a very rewarding career. I was very fortunate and very blessed. As you know, I didn't start out in medicine. I left home at 16 to find a way to become a doctor after being burned, and was in nursing prior to medicine, loved nursing. And I think all of those experiences helped make me the doctor that I am today. So.
Awesome. Last question here. What motivates you more, the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat?
Well, up until my run for the Senate, I was more familiar with the agony of defeat rather than the thrill of victory. And so now the thrill of victory may be snatched out of the, out of the jaws. But I have a friend in Iowa City who told me, I finally figured you out. You hate losing more than you love winning. And so, coming as an underdog, 4 kids in a family of 8, parents not being formally educated, working, just to try to become a doctor. I think I'm kind of like the underdog mentality. It's always the teams I choose tend to be underdog teams. And so I think I just, especially when I think people merit, I am a person who believes in merit, who believes you achieve by merit, who still believes the United States is one of the few countries where that can occur. And it's why it's so important to preserve that for everyone in the United States, but around the world, to serve as this model where we should be wanting to promote opportunity for everyone to fulfill whatever their potential is. I mean, and Martin Luther King actually said that best, even if you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper you can be. We should all rise to the challenge of meeting our potential and to give our best selves. So I think I'm going to have to say, I hate losing more than I love winning.
Hey, it's a great motivator. Well, I want to thank you, Congresswoman, for coming on the program. It's absolutely stunning that you have to go through this process while also doing your job for the people of Iowa who sent you there to work. And I really hope this can get resolved as quickly as possible, and that the listeners here on the program will put the pressure on the representatives in Washington to end this charade, and we can get back to the people's business. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, and thank you so much for having me on and bringing attention to this. As I said, it's beyond personal. It really does reflect a precedent and what's happening right now in Congress. And all of us should be concerned about that. We should all be outraged.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You be safe, be well, and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So first of all, she's great, Duncan. Great interview.
Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, she's she's fantastic, really down to earth. The one thing that was sort of a surprise coming out of this interview, because I had asked her, what's her recourse, is basically she has none.
It's unbelievable.
Wow.
That Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats could theoretically just unseat her. And she'd have to run again in 2022.
It's just absolutely brazen. And it's so hard to fully capture the anger that I have at the just pure hypocrisy that Democrats are displaying. Nancy Pelosi is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. This Speaker of the House told us for 3 months that state certified elections are sacrosanct, and that's the end of the story, right? You couldn't talk about any of it. It was sacrosanct. Right up until a Democrat gets beat. And then all of a sudden they're going to have the House of Representatives try to unseat a state certified member of Congress. I mean, so I this has just irritated me beyond belief, as I imagine a lot of the minions feel the same way. And so I started looking at Nancy Pelosi and what she had to say about, and we ran across this just unbelievable clip. This is back in 2017 when she was talking about the election down in Alabama, Senate election down in Alabama, where a Democrat, Jones, was about to be seated.
In our House, when someone gets elected, we seat them. We enfranchise their voters, Republican or Democratic. We don't say we have to wait for the paperwork. We hear the will of the people.
Oh, the will of the people.
Isn't that something?
She is awful.
I mean, it goes beyond hypocrisy. To me, this just strikes me as it's like grand theft auto in broad daylight, brazen.
I mean, this group of Democrats is the worst I've ever seen. I think, I've had a running theory for years that Trump's greatest superpower was turning his political opponents into a lesser version of himself, right? And I think what he's left behind with these Democrats are people who are just absolutely lacking all scruples, all integrity. They don't even make a attempt to try to justify their hypocrisy. Everything is just a pure power play, and it's brazen.
Mm-hmm. It's theft, straight up theft. The election was won, the recount was won, the election was certified, and now they're still trying to steal it. It's unbelievable.
How can you speak so passionately about a principle like state certified elections that, oh gosh, we don't even wait for the paperwork. We seat them. I mean, this is a matter of principle. And then turn around in a course of 3 months where you're on the losing side of the election and completely reverse it without even addressing it.
She will at the same time wax poetic about, the rights of voters in states and protecting those rights and stopping the disenfranchisement of voters. And that's why we need to pass HR 1 while simultaneously disenfranchising the voters in Iowa's 2nd congressional district.
It's sociopathic. The brazen effort, just pure power. This is, again, we talked about this on Tuesday. There's nothing to do with the good of the American people, nothing to do with their healthcare, nothing to do with their education, nothing to do with COVID, nothing to do with national security, nothing to do with immigration, anything that's bothering us here in this country. They don't give a shit. That's not their interest. What their interest is trying to figure out a way to game the system to elect more Democrats. Right. And you mentioned HR 1. Well, the only way that they're going to be able to pass HR 1 is by eliminating the filibuster. So here we go.
Yep.
The campaign to eliminate the filibuster begins. All of a sudden, you hear every Democrat talk about how it's a relic of Jim Crow, right? It's a racist tool, which, by the way, Democrats used the racist tool to filibuster Tim Scott's police reform bill last year.
Yeah, literally last year. And they haven't introduced legislation on policing reform.
No, they did a press conference with Kente cloths, but that was about it. That was all they did.
Yep.
In the death of George Floyd to try to address concerns that people had. They don't care. This isn't about that. This is HR 1, right? Our first priority, they declared, HR 1. And it is an effort to try to rig every election in America to give Democrats an advantage. But in order to do that, as I said, they have to get rid of the filibuster. Well, that's interesting. What do you think that they said about the filibuster when Republicans had unified government?
Good question.
Let's cue Dick Durbin on that.
What about that nuclear option, doing away with the filibuster?
Well, I can tell you that would be the end of the Senate as it was originally devised and created going back to our founding fathers.
Well, there you go. Whoops.
Like I said, it makes no attempt. Now Durbin was asked again on Meet the Press now that he's in favor of doing away with the filibuster. And he said, well, Mitch McConnell convinced me that it's because of his abuse of the filibuster. Well, here's the problem. Mitch McConnell hasn't used the filibuster between the time that Dick Durbin said that in 2018 and today, because he's been in the majority.
I mean, it's becoming so clear that anytime the Dems want something, they say anyone who disagrees with us is a racist. This is a Jim Crow relic. Wow, I can't believe you're a racist. Every time.
And they used it again. They used it to filibuster a Black Republicans police reform bill last year. They used the filibuster. Dick Durbin supported using the filibuster last year to do that. And now it's a Jim Crow relic and must be destroyed. It's fucking crazy.
Unbelievable.
Mind blowing. And here's another little bit that I picked up last night. Some of the minions were on board with me as I was on Twitter on this, but they've now changed eliminating the filibuster from the nuclear option to filibuster reform.
Reform. Yeah. Reform. They got the focus group results in.
I can't wait until Republicans take back unified government and reform abortion. or reform gun laws.
I think the campaign slogan in 2024 will be reform the wall, reform the wall,
Incredible.
reform the wall,
reform the wall.
There we go.
Which is a good transition to another little bit that we're hearing from these idiots. I mean, Duncan, I think you were looking at a clip of an old clip of how Joe Biden had handled the immigration question. Because, of course, we have a complete disaster on our southern border right now, which everybody in the White House somehow believes they aren't to blame for.
Correct. Yeah. So, Joe Biden does this interview with Stephanopoulos where he essentially takes no responsibility for the crisis at our southern border. The quote is, and this is Biden talking about himself in the third person, he says, "The idea that Joe Biden said, 'Come,' I heard the other day that migrants are coming because they know I'm a nice guy." Stephanopoulos goes, "They're saying this." Biden replies, "Yeah, well, here's the deal. They're not." Okay, well, that's really interesting, Joe. That's, of course, not true. National Review put up an article recently which basically breaks down Biden's lie here. And in particular, you had migrants who came to the border and said, literally, this is a quote, "Biden promised us." Biden promised us. So they are saying that.
They are saying that. Well, who can blame them? I mean, I think Biden believes because he can't remember anything. None of us can either.
Amazing.
I mean, we were awake during the campaign, right? I mean, I'm looking around like, is everybody else? Did I lose my mind?
I mean, and the hypocrisy, knows no bounds. If you do go back and you look at what Biden was saying during the Democratic primary in 2020, it's incredible. So let's play the clip from the Univision debate.
Are you prepared to say tonight that you and President Obama made a mistake about deportations? Why should Latinos trust you?
What Latinos should look at is comparing this president to the president we have is outrageous. Number one, we didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families. We didn't do all of those things.
Incredible. He's currently has kids in cages.
Amazingly, though, they did it in the Obama. I mean, that's not up for debate. In fact, the great scandal of covering the Trump immigration issue was that they were using photos from the Obama administration of kids in cages to say Trump was putting kids in cages.
That's right.
and then he becomes president and puts kids in cages.
There you go, folks. Perfect. Mission accomplished.
Which is so good. But again, what I want to get to here is the core of this, which is, are they to blame? And there is no question they are to blame. You cited the National Review piece that talked about the specific rhetoric that they used about, whether they were going to allow people into this country and grant citizenship and all that kind of thing. I'm going to play a clip from Joe Biden in February of 2020.
On day one, I'm sending to the United States Congress a immigration bill providing a pathway for 11 million undocumented, and I'm going to make sure every dreamer is protected now.
Well, they heard him.
On day one. So you got to get there, right? And all of a sudden the Obama administration's the Biden administration's wondering why it is that so many people have shown up at the border.
Gosh, well, such a surprise. Who
would
have thought?
What a surprise. And by the way, they're wearing T-shirts that say Biden Harris.
I mean, that's the thing is like for them to try and claim they were told it's like, okay, they're wearing like the Biden campaign logo shirts saying, "Let us in." They got the message. They got the message. You can't tell us that you weren't putting that message out there.
I mean, he was saying explicitly that they would not turn people away at the border. They were saying explicitly that. And repeatedly. I think that Univision debate clip that you just played, I think there's like 4 or 5 more instances in that one debate. And by the way, do you remember the debate in the middle of June of the off year where they asked 16 candidates whether or not they would provide health care for the illegal immigrants, and every single Democrat raised their hand?
Yep.
Including Joe?
Message received.
What's the message? You know, I don't know. I don't think there's any confusion about that whatsoever. And here we are. Now we're dealing with what is a huge humanitarian crisis and a border problem, frankly, a national security problem. And they are to blame. And Joe tells George Stephanopoulos, not my problem. Jen Psaki from the podium says, oh, we're not telling people not to come, just don't come now. Like they're taking dinner reservations.
It's really something.
You know? Yeah, anyway. Look, there's a lot more outrage. We're going to stay on this Iowa 2 situation and this filibuster situation and the HR 1 situation. Obviously, we'll cover immigration. But what they're trying to do here, we need to be very clear about. It is a political power play to try to eliminate conservatives from having any sort of governing power whatsoever. That's it.
That's it.
So this is our next guest, very strong voice on this and many other topics. Katie Pavlich, Town Hall and Fox News. She's been a warrior for many years for the conservative cause, and maybe we should just jump right into it. I want to welcome to the program a very good friend, an absolute talent. You know her from Fox News and the editor of townhall.com. It's Katie Pavlich.
Josh, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited.
I mean, this is great.
Infamous Ruthless.
I know it. I know it. And you know what? We're not so ruthless that we're going to make anybody uncomfortable here. We like to just sort of like keep it light, you know?
Yeah, it's good. We need some of that, especially with everything going on, as you know.
Very, very tough.
By the way, I'm filling out my hackathon bracket, my Hack Magnus.
Yes.
Way done.
Yes.
I did put that out.
Look, can you preview like who you have as a winner?
I can preview. Well, so I've only done the left side of the bracket, but right now it's between Ruben, Stelter, Don Lemon, and Max Boot.
Absolute powerhouses, every one of them. You can't go
I haven't
wrong.
even started on the right side yet, so I'll get there.
One of them is definitely going to be in it, right? And Stelter, as a repeating champion, got to be the heavy favorite at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. Ruben's pretty close. Ruben's pretty close, man. Because she still has conservative in her Twitter bio, and it's like
Totally. For those of us who had to,
my project, I'm doing it when I have some spare time.
I love it. Well, thank you, and the minions appreciate your participation, Katie.
Yes. Submit your own bracket, everybody. We gotta see who wins. Pretty fun.
That's right. So let's just jump right in. There's one thing that you wrote this week that really caught my eye on Town Hall, and it's entitled "A Parent Who Criticized Critical Race Theory Has Been Placed on a Hit List for Harassment."
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Ian Pryor is a former DOJ official, and he's now has his own firm, and he's a concerned parent. Fairfax County Schools, but also Loudoun County Schools, have now contracted people who are affiliated with critical race theory to come in and teach about critical race theory, which is this awful thing that pits kids against each other and makes you judge everybody by your skin color. And he wrote this op-ed, so to speak, but it's really well detailed and backed up by interesting studies and information. It's not just like an opinion piece.
Yeah, he's a sharp guy.
About how critical race theory essentially doesn't, he says it rejects all nuances and statistics that might explain racially disparate outcomes, while well-reasoned and articulate disagreement is considered evidence of white supremacy. So these school districts have essentially like paid outside consultants on anti-racism to come in. And in Fairfax County, the professor who said that Amy Coney Barrett, the now Supreme Court justice, was a colonist for adopting 2 children from Haiti who probably would have died if they stayed in Haiti.
I forgot.
Adopting them and bringing them into her family. She was a colonialist rather. He was paid $30,000 by the Fairfax County School District to come in and give like a 20-minute Zoom talk about critical race theory. So anyway, that's going on like generally in school districts around the country. Now in Loudoun County, Ian writes this op-ed about how he thinks that the Loudoun County School Board should not be engaging in allowing for this indoctrination of children in public schools, taxpayer-funded schools, and teaching these children and using them as guinea pigs of, an experiment of critical race theory that's basically just communism in a lot of ways. So he writes this op-ed, and now these women who are in, and just other parents in general and a member of the school board actually, are in this group called Anti-Racist Parents of Loudoun County, and it's a Facebook group.
Of course.
It's a Facebook group that is private, of course, so you have to be led into the group. And someone sent him all these screenshots about how they're responding to his op-ed, including Beth Bartz, who is on the Loudoun County School District Board, by encouraging members of the group to do things like hack into websites, which is illegal,
they're encouraging
to spread
people
information, expose these people publicly, create online petitions, create counter mailings, create online profiles, and join these groups to collect and communicate information. Hackers can shut down their pages or redirect them to critical race theory / anti-racist informational web pages. So they're advocating basically for illegal activity to combat people like Ian Pryor. And Ian's not the only person who's been put on this list. Other parents, though. So then there's more screenshots that are put out there of these people making lists of names of parents. Let's make a list so we know who's on the list of the parents that we need to publicly shame, and put on this essential hit list for retaliation for daring to comment about critical race theory. And so then the Daily Wire actually did a follow-up to this. And keep in mind, these are all teachers who refuse to go back to school even after they get the vaccine as well.
Right.
So the Daily Wire is saying that the sheriff has launched a criminal investigation into it to see why are they advocating for criminal behavior. But the county prosecutor was elected with money from George Soros. He's one of those guys. And he's also a member of this anti-racist Loudoun County family group. So
I love the anti-racist Facebook. Anytime anybody says that, they're the anti-racist, they're like the black box on Instagram people who are the first people to call the police if they see an African-American walking through.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just
I call them the
humans.
D3s. And it's that stands for deranged woke white women.
Yep.
Because there's 3 W's, so the D3s. So this is a D3 group. This is a bunch of deranged woke white women who are retaliating with illegal activity and behavior against parents who are speaking out against critical race theory. Yay!
I mean, the thing is, thank God we have you, Katie, because you're sort of on the front line of fighting back on the deranged white woke woman.
Yeah, the D3s, I'm they're the worst, guys. Oh my God.
You've been doing it a long time.
So well with their signs that say hate doesn't live here in their yard, lecturing police in their lecturing black police officers in their Lululemon pants.
Oh yeah.
Making sure that they post on Instagram and they feel really good about themselves and making a difference in the community. And they feel really excited when they get to make a list of parents and, say you should hack their websites, redirect them. That'll get them.
Your DMs must just be a mess with these people.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently engaged in a Twitter spat with D3 Alyssa Milano.
Oh.
So.
Well, tell us, what's that about?
So she's on the biological males should be able to play in women's sports train. I'm not.
Right.
I don't care. It's not about hating people. It's not about you can be whoever you want as an adult, but women should be a protected class in terms of, Title IX, which we fought for decades and decades. And we shouldn't allow biological men to supplement women and take away opportunities from women. And feminism, I thought, was about standing up for women. So anyway, we're in a fight about that.
Yeah, no, listen, if there is a culture war that the left has waged, you can find Katie Pavlich on the other side holding up your values. As long as I've been involved, I feel like that is a truism.
Doing my best.
Well, but we need to do it more and more. And I hope that all of our conservative friends and neighbors are paying attention to what's happening right now, because this administration and House and Senate Democrats are off to the most left-wing start to a new Congress that I've ever seen in my life. And everything from immigration to these political power plays, trying to steal House seats, pass H.R. 1, eliminate the filibuster. All this stuff is just about sort of power, right?
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with improving anybody's lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's all about power. It's the only thing that matters. It's amazing that Dick Durbin was on the floor this week arguing that the reason we have to get rid of the filibuster is because nothing's getting through Congress. It's like, that's actually the entire point of why the filibuster was put in, because we don't want just bad legislation getting pushed through with the tyranny of the majority all the time. That's the reason why. I loved Mitch McConnell's response, though. He always warns them that they're going to regret things, and they never listen to him. And then 4 years from now, they're going to be really upset. But you're right. The fact that Joe Biden campaigned on being a moderate, the fact that Republicans almost took back the House, it's a 50-50 Senate, and yet we are seeing this insane far left push, despite the fact that they don't have this massive mandate, right? It is all about power. It's solidifying power forever. H.R. 1 especially is absolutely insane for a lot of reasons. It solidifies every bad thing that happened during the 2020 election, that puts doubt in people's minds about why things weren't transparent and why things weren't explained, and if there are irregularities. They just want to kind of solidify that and not allow anyone to ask questions. And it's just incredible that Democrats are allowed to talk about election reform, but as soon as a Republican brings it up, they're a conspiracy theorist. They're trying to make sure that Black people don't vote, that they want to suppress the vote.
That's right.
So they're allowed to ram this thing through and talk about elections all they want. But the right has been put into this corner because of the actions of a few people, and they're not allowed to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the backdrop to that is Nancy Pelosi attempting to completely disenfranchise voters in Iowa's 2nd District by taking away an elected representative, right? I mean, the fact that they don't even try to square the circle anymore, they make no attempt to try to justify this position, just blows my mind.
Yeah, and this that seat has already been sworn in. It was not only validated and certified by the state, but the Congresswoman has been sworn in, and she's been voting. In fact, she was at the border this week, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
And so, this is all about power for them, and they're always claiming in their public relations statements that they're all about unity and wanting to work with Republicans, bipartisanship, but they're not. I mean, they only care about solidifying power for them as much as they possibly can, and they're clearly doing that with this far left push that's been successful. I mean, the fact that we just rammed through a $1.9 trillion bill with a 50-50 Senate,
unbelievable,
pretty insane.
Totally insane.
It's just going to get worse. And then what's the reaction to that, right? It's the reaction is, if you guys don't care, the right's not going to care either. Right. So there's going to be no compromise. I mean, it creates this situation where you can't work together ever, because why would you?
No,
well,
I mean,
they're never going to give the right credit for anything. So we should also do the same thing when we're in power.
Yeah, it's just a cyclical spiral that keeps going. I want to get your thoughts quickly on the immigration situation, which I know you've been following pretty closely.
Yeah. So, the White House keeps having these press briefings with Jen Psaki, of course, not with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's refusing to go to the border because, God forbid, he would have to take a press pool there to actually, maybe go inside one of these facilities that are jam-packed 700% past capacity, where they're violating federal law. They keep arguing that they have a humane process, that the Trump administration had an inhumane immigration process, and that their process is humane. This is not a humane process. Smashing thousands of kids into Border Patrol facilities that are jails made for adults is not a humane process. Encouraging human trafficking and sex trafficking, the Texas officials, including Greg Abbott and his sex trafficking expert and director in Texas, gave a press conference today. The things that they talk about what's going on, the forced prostitution, the reusing of children to get into the states, it's really awful stuff that's hard for people to listen to and talk about, but that's what this really means. And that's not humane. That is inhumane. And they've created this. And so I actually wrote a piece about this for The Hill today. If people want to check out like a longer version of the argument about how these policies are actually very inhumane while they lie and say that they have a more humane process. Nothing about any of this is humane.
No, not inhumane at all. And it was basically a bunch of people that were acting on an invitation that Joe Biden had provided them over the series of months in a campaign where he says, nobody's going to be turned away at the border.
Yeah, and it's just naive. I mean, it just emboldens all the worst criminal elements, and it's an expansive topic. The cartels are now using this crisis to import more narcotics into the country, which of course affects American communities. And then there's the COVID thing. I mean, the fact that they are not testing. When Pete Buttigieg wanted to do a domestic flight program where everyone was required to be tested before a domestic flight, and they're not testing. They're leaving it up to local cities and NGOs like churches to test these people. I mean, but I can't get on like I can't fly into the country without a test. And so they act like it's not their job, but they've tried to mandate this for other people, and they have no plan to keep COVID from spreading. And that'll take down the country again faster than anything else we've seen totally past year. And it's like they just don't care. No, it's got to fit the woke sort of prescription of policies that they've rolled out in the first quarter, which is just a complete nightmare. Listen, Katie, I would talk to you for 3 hours about all these topics. You are terrific, but I've got to get to 3 questions that we asked every single right.
Right. And this is, cuts to the core of you. So be aware. Okay.
All right. I'm ready.
The first question, your last meal on earth, Katie Pavlich, what would it be?
Elk tenderloins and mashed potatoes.
Wow. Wow.
So campfire. You can't eat them like in a restaurant. It has to be the real deal. And you had to have hunted it yourself.
That is impressive. That's the most impressive answer we've had so far.
Good.
Too. You've given it a lot of thought.
I guess you could say I've given it a lot of thought.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that I knew that so quickly, but
did you grow up hunting? You like northern Arizona, right?
Yep. Grew up hunting with my dad. Now our ritual the night before opening day for elk hunt was to eat elk tenderloin as good luck the night before in camp.
Very good. Very good.
It's a tradition.
I love that. And for those of you unfamiliar, northern Arizona is kind of more like a Colorado than it is like a desert Arizona. Big difference up there.
Big difference. Yes.
It's great. Well, just in case you're interested in running for Senate, we still have a bunch of problems to figure out.
Not interested at all, but thanks. It seems like the worst job. No, thank you.
Fair enough. All right. So if you weren't involved in political journalism, what would you be doing with your life?
Ooh. I would probably own like a clothing boutique or like a salon.
I like it.
Or maybe a gun store, some kind of business.
Yeah. Entrepreneurial
spirit. Yeah. I grew up in a car wash, so my parents owned a car wash. So I kind of have that. That was really hard, so I wouldn't do that again, but
yeah.
Just like a little easier.
Not exactly.
Shoveling mud would be nice.
I love it. Okay. So here's the one that really separates the wheat from the chaff. It's what motivates you more, the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat?
I think the thrill of victory, because I think defeat helps you in a lot of ways in life. Like I think you learn a lot of, if you're that kind of person who can learn from your mistakes, and certainly I have, for sure. Like if you do something the wrong way or you lose, there's always a lesson in that. So
it's good. That's a good answer. You can tell a lot about somebody, by the way, by those 3 answers. I think you passed.
I don't want to lose, but I can learn from losing. Like I don't think it's all is lost if you lose.
You're a well-rounded individual, Katie Pavlich.
That's my mom. She'll be very happy.
Listen, thank you so much for joining us on Ruthless.
Thank you.
We'll do it again soon.
Okay.
So first of all, she's great, and thank her so much for coming onto the program. But she's really fired up about the curriculum and the woke moms and all of the incredible sort of bullying that the woke mom and dads are doing to regular parents in their communities. And I thank God she's doing it.
It's great. It's great. And it is pretty incredible how, we went from, media elites and Democratic politicians trying to cancel people and shame people. And now it's sort of just like permeated through to culture, at the local level, which is terrifying.
Terrifying. The way to online is now taking action in their own communities. And it's awful.
It's something. The whole thing is that they just do not want any opposing viewpoints. There's no dissent allowed. You see CNN going after Tucker. Now you're seeing it on the local level. They just want to crush all dissent.
Yeah. And you can understand why, people with screws loose watch what's happening at the national level and try to emulate it at the local level. I mean, you get it. It's dangerous. But anyway, we're not going to put up with it here on the variety program. I can tell you that much.
That's right.
Folks, look, this has been a really big week. We've got another really huge week. We have really big interview at the beginning of next week, but we've got Hack Madness throughout.
That's right. Everyone keep voting. I want to see those sheets. Take screenshots, take photos of your filled out brackets. Let the Hack Madness begin.
Absolutely. Smug, sign us out of here.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, remember, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday, minions. Stay ruthless.